Welcome to a special viewing of History Presents. This week we will be looking into the interesting events of the Cold War. Unfortunately, due to legal issues, this broadcast is limited to the events outside of Cuba. We will be covering these stories through a series of personal interviews and professionally reenacted scenes. I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome back to History Presents. Joining us today are two representatives from the NATO and Warsaw Pacts. They're here to discuss what the pacts do and why they were made.
Hello, good evening. My name is Lord Ismay, and I'm the Secretary General of NATO. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and it was started as a group of Western European countries and North American countries to stop the spread of communism.
How many countries were initially a part of NATO, Baron?
Well, originally 12, but then we started to invite other countries such as Greece, Turkey, and Western Europe.
An absolute outrage. World War II, Germany, big army. They take over everything, almost destroying all of Mother Russia. And then you presume to give them back an army to help with your NATO pact? Preposterous. This is the main reason we started the Warsaw Pact.
This seems like a very heated topic. Why did it never get violent?
Well, we truly did not want a third world war. However, we did want to keep our military strong in case of any communist attacks.
And how about you, Russia?
Well, our strategy was much the same. With the new Warsaw Pact, we were able to broaden our sphere of influence around Russia and Asia, you know. And then, basically, we just kept a really big army to scare off the NATO, letting them know that if they did attack us, it would be the most bloody war they'd ever gotten into.
I see. Good example of the spiral model. Well, this has been very eye-opening. Thank you both for coming in. We will now be discussing the Suez Crisis in Egypt, an event that further pronounced the rivalry between the USSR and America. With us to explain what happened is President Nasser, the leader in Egypt.
Hello.
So, President Nasser, how did this crisis start?
Well, us Egyptians were trying to build a dam on the Nile River, and we originally had funding from France, Britain, and America. And in order to secure more money to help speed up the production of the dam, we turned to communist countries, asked Soviet Russia and China for funds as well. And when America and their allies caught wind of this, they were very disappointed in us and cut off funding. And when they cut off funding, we couldn't have our dam, so that made us pretty mad, and we decided to nationalize the Suez Canal. This is a canal that connects the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. Very important for trading, very important. And so when we cut this off from them, they couldn't use it, and they were angry, especially France and Britain.
So, what did they do about it?
Well, France and Britain went to the Israelites, who has always been jealous of our power. And they worked together to attack us. And they invaded and took parts of Egypt. In order to reprimand them, per se, we sunk many ships in the Suez Canal, damming it up and preventing all further trade.
And how is it that the Soviets got involved?
Well, when France and Britain invaded, the Soviets were not very happy about this because we were kind of their ally, working together with economic funding. So they sent word to France and Britain that if they attacked us anymore, they would send in their own troops and might get nuclear. France and Britain did not want this, but they still wanted the dam and turned to America for some help. And they really wanted help from America, but America decided that they didn't want a full-scale war and got the UN involved. And the UN came in and told France and Britain they needed to leave. So eventually France and Britain left, and they undammed the canal and gave it back into our control. And we were able to put taxes on it and such, and it helped us pay off the Nile.
Well, thank you for your detailed response. This is definitely an important event in the Cold War era. Hello again. With us today, we have one of the Laotian nationalist leaders to explain what was really going on in the civil war in Laos. He managed to escape before the country fell to communism, and is here today to tell us the story. Thank you very much for coming. Please, tell us how it happened.
Well, France had originally occupied Laos, but when they were pushed out, Laos was no longer under French control. Despite this, our government was still loyal to the French nationalists. However, the communist group, the Pathet Lao, decided to take control and a civil war began.
And where was your aid during this?
So the Pathet Lao was being supported and funded by the Soviets. America did not want any communism to spread any further and began to fund our government and our military. We were putting up a good fight. However, we were slowly losing ground. To stop the communists from winning, America announced that it would set a full-scale invasion of Laos as the Soviets did not stop funding the Pathet Lao.
And what was the Soviets' reaction to this?
Well, the Soviets did draw back their funding, and America then drew back some of their funding. We were able to keep the war pretty even. However, eventually we began to notice some Soviets and their weapons mixed with the Pathet Lao, and we were beginning to be overwhelmed. America heard of this and sent in their own secret military to help and train us. Despite their help, the communists took over Laos. I was one of few to escape before Laos fell to communism.
Wow. A very moving story.
It's nice to finally come to America.
Yes, it's a pleasure to talk about world peace with you, Khrushchev.
Yes, the main reason I came here was to talk about global disarmament and world peace. I think that the nuclear disaster we're headed for is not going to be good for either country, and I think it would be best if we stopped it before it happened.
Yes, I fully agree. I think the best way to go about this is to disarm all nuclear weapons in the world, even countries not directly involved in the Cold War.
Yes, the only problem I foresee is the need to use them again, like the bombing of Japan.
Well, hopefully it won't come to that.
We hope for your full cooperation in the disarmament of the world, as well as our hopes for world peace.
Yes, we will talk about this at the summit in Geneva in the UN.
ICBMs stand for Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. These missiles were extremely deadly and under mass production from both the US and the USSR during the Cold War. These were in such high demand because they were able to attack any place in the enemy's sphere of influence and at the same time were impossible to defend from. The production of ICBMs were being produced in a spiral model that quickly got out of control. Here is some footage of the MX Peacemaker ICBM.
Today we are talking to the President about the infamous U-2 incident. There's a lot of confusion about exactly what happened. Mr. Eisenhower, can you clarify some of this?
Yes, well, our intentions were to spy on the USSR to see if they had nuclear facilities. And the planes were supposed to fly too high for missiles to hit the planes. However, France's Powers got hit by a surface-to-air missile and was shot down and found in Russia.
And, what happened because of this?
Well, as you would expect, Mr. Khrushchev was very upset and wanted me to apologize to him in the Geneva conference. However, I refused to apologize, and it was quite an embarrassing moment for me as president. This stopped all hopes of a peace treaty at Geneva.
With us today we have Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. He is here to discuss with us the Flexible Response Force policy. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, the Flexible Response Program is it's a way to keep us out of full-out nuclear war. It's very dependable. It works as a series of steps coming from peace to full-out nuclear war, with a series of steps in the middle, depending on how important or dangerous the situation is. While these steps are expensive, they will ultimately cost less than a full-out nuclear war with the Russians. Eisenhower's response was just to send in a full army, and while that may have worked before other countries had nukes, that is now a very sure way to get yourself into a full-out nuclear war. We have developed a new way, a much safer way to wage war and go about protecting the world from communism. And it is a good way to keep us out of nuclear war.
Tonight we have a special guest on History Presents. How are you doing tonight, President Nixon?
Well, I'm a little tired from my international travels, but otherwise I'm pretty good.
Well, that's good to hear. Where were you visiting?
Well, I went over to China for a little while to discuss diplomatic relationships with Chairman Mao, and then I traveled on to the Soviet Union.
Well, how did the meeting go there?
It went very well in China. We talked a lot about our future together as peace-loving countries, and we hope to resolve the problem in Vietnam, hopefully both backing down, trying to stop the unneeded bloodshed. And since that, I think we have a much better chance at a peaceful future as we both understand each other much better now.
And hopefully this will pave the way for future work with China. And what happened in the Soviet Union?
Well, when I went to the Soviet Union, after first I had gone to China, and I knew that they were having some rough patches together. So they did not want to be U.S. and China against the USSR. So they were happy to work with me on pretty much whatever I wanted. And they also really needed the food we were having because they were having a tough time up there. And so we were able
Supplies were short.
Yes, definitely very short. We worked out some arms limitation. We worked on the Vietnam crisis still, and we're hoping to resolve this nuclear situation.
That's great.
On August 13, 1961, forces from East Germany and Soviet Russia used barbed wire to shut off the border between the Soviet and Western Allied areas of Berlin. By August 16th, a full concrete structure was being built. Within a few days, the wall had become 4 meters high and 111 kilometers long. It was constantly patrolled by East German border guards, who lived in the bunkers and manned the watchtowers. After only a few short weeks, the wall had become almost impossible to thwart. The Soviets' excuse for their actions was that the Western powers were spying on Russia through Berlin, and they needed to protect their national intelligence by keeping Allied spies out. Even though it was punishable by death, many civilians from East Berlin tried to cross the wall and escape their communist dictators. In total, 190 people were shot by the communists crossing over the wall. SALT stands for Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. This was a treaty between Richard Nixon and General Secretary of the Communist Party, Leonid Brezhnev. Its general purpose was to lower the amount of long-range nuclear missiles for a period of 5 years. 3 topics were discussed at the meeting. The ABM Treaty. That treaty limited each country to 100 anti-ballistic missiles. The Interim Treaty, in which the USSR agreed to only have 1,618 ICBMs, and the U.S. agreed to only 1,054. They also had the Basic Principles Agreement, in which the U.S. and USSR agreed to do their best to avoid military conflict and practice restraint in international affairs.